It is Monday, August 14th, and today we're going to make some tamales. I've already gone through some of the preparation work, and what I'm using is a 2-pound piece of pork loin roast. And it's a nice piece of meat, and for tamales what I usually do is I cut it and cube it, and I cut it into little 3/4 inch to 1 inch cubes. And one of the things I also try to do is I also try to get rid of some of the fat in the thing. I want some fat in the meat so that I can have some little bit of taste, but if there's too much fat, I cut it out. One year, when I was first making tamales, I got a little careless and I left too much fat in there. Some of the tamales were nothing but pieces of fat in it, and they weren't very good, needless to say. And I've got it mostly cubed up. I've already got my onions cut up. I've got my garlic cut up. I think I left one piece of garlic just to play with. Top that baby. Peel off the garlic. Now you see why I didn't do all this on tape. It's just silly. Cut off the bad part. I got 2 pounds of pork. I've got about a medium-sized onion that I've chopped, about 6 cloves of garlic, 10 whole cloves of whole cloves. That's what I was trying to say. Whole cloves, and about a teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay, that's about it. Now what happens is all this stuff just comes up in the pot. Here's my pot. Into my pot, I'm adding 2 pounds of cubed pork. I'm adding about a medium chopped onion. I'm adding about 6 cloves of garlic that have been run through my garlic press. I'm adding 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And I'm going to add about 10 whole cloves. Alright, I got the ingredients in the pot. And now I want to add water. Just plain old water. And one of the things I want to make sure I do is that I add enough water so that when the pork is done cooking, I'm going to have enough water left over that I'm going to save the water and use the water later when I cook off the tamales themselves. This pot just goes on the stove, just like that. I'm going to crank the heat up and get it boiling, and put the lid on it. And that's going to cook like that for a couple, 3 hours. Okay, we're back for a little check and seeing how we're doing here. Yep, we got a simmer there, and what we're doing is we're just letting this simmer away. The pork has been cooking for about, I don't know, almost an hour. And it's still cooking away. And I've started to work on the sauce. And I'm going to work on the sauce here in just a bit. But basically what the sauce is you take the chili anchos, which are these peppers, and usually if you find them, you want to get them soft. This one's pretty nice and soft. You can just see how it feels. And I'll cut one open here in a minute. You go ahead and cut those. For 2 pounds of pork, I'm using about 8 chili anchos. These have been cut open, stems and seeds have been removed, and if you want to get rid of the hot stuff, you get rid of the veins. I'm going to add about 6 cloves of garlic, a teaspoon of salt, and 2 teaspoons of cumin to begin with. I'm going to add that to my blender with some water, probably about 16 or 24 ounces of water, just to get some moisture in there. And then I'm going to blend it up. Once the meat's done, then I'm going to drain the meat. Take the pepper, and you get a nice sharp knife, and you just slit it down the side, all the way down. And then it just pops open. And what you want to do is you want to remove all these seeds. See all the seeds in there? And the veins. And take off the stem. Really exciting to watch this, isn't it? And then I just tip it over and pour all the seeds. And then the veins are in there. Now, you can wash these. I usually don't. Not for this. When we soak them in the water, some of the water it'll get cleaned off in the water, but if you want to use water, you can. these same peppers are also used to make stuffed pepper. You essentially do the same thing, except you'd be a little more careful about ripping them open. Like, since I'm going to use them for a sauce, I'm not being too careful, but if you wanted to stuff them, you just dump off the seeds and leave the stem in and pull the veins out. Then you would go ahead and fill them with cheese. You'd stick cheese in there, and then just cover it back up, and then you put a batter on it and deep fry it. Okay, we're moving right along here. My water sounds nice and hot. So I've got my 8 chili anchos in there that have been cut open, seeds and stems removed, and the veins. Take out the heat. Now I'm just going to add some hot water to them. It's boiling water. And water to cover. And what's going to happen is these things are going to be reconstituted. So I'm going to let that sit for about 20 minutes or so. And I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap. The meat is done cooking. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to drain the meat. I'm going to save the juice into these buckets. I'm going to put the meat into here while I'm making my sauce. So I'm getting those cloves, and I need to find a better way to do this. Oh, it seems to be working. And again, the reason I'm saving this water is because later today when I go to cook the tamales off, I want this pork juice water to put in the bottom of the pan. I've now got all the water drained out. I got about 3 buckets of water. I don't know whether I used all the water, but I sure got a lot of it. 3 buckets of water. The sauce is made with 8 chili anchos that have been soaked in water, boiling water. I cut them open, clean out the seeds and stems, and I've reconstituted them for about 20 minutes. And now you can see how, wow, that water's still hot. See how nice and, that is hot. See how nice and soft they are? And I got my blender, and what I'm going to do is make sure everything's tight. Boy, I had this stuff come flying over me one time. That was a mistake. Okay, so we got our reconstituted chili anchos. Can you see how nice they look? Can you see that? Really nice and well reconstituted. Then I'm going to add about 6 cloves of garlic. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt and 2 teaspoons of cumin. And once I get it all blended, I'm going to do a taste test. Now if I was thinking, I would have put the garlic on the bottom, but yeah. Here's the garlic, 6 cloves. 1 teaspoon of salt. And 2 teaspoons of cumin. And we'll do a taste test here. I'm at about the 24-ounce mark. I've got it blended. It looks a little thick to me. I might add some more water. But see, it's a little on the thick side. The problem with it being too thick is it might dry out quicker once I got the thing cooking. But I'm also going to test it for salt and cumin. Oh! That's got a kick to it. Probably a little bit too much cumin for this amount. The cumin's a little bit overpowering right now, but it's probably all right. Probably could use a pinch more of salt and a little bit more water. Pork is cooled down. I'm kind of picking through it and making sure that I've got most of the fat off of it. As I said before, once I made tamales and I didn't pick off fat, and poor Kristen is the one that got a tamale and nothing but fat, and it was awful. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the roux for the sauce. So for the roux, you use equal parts of flour and oil. So I'm using Crisco, 2 tablespoons of Crisco. Now I'm adding 2 tablespoons of flour. And to make your roux, you stir it up until it browns up a little bit. See? Almost there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now what we want to do is we want to add our sauce and bring that to a boil. Well, put our sauce in. It's going to splatter. Sounds good, don't it? But yes, it is splattering. Now, as my grandmother would always do, I'm going to rinse out this pot and get all this nice chili out of here. which is one of the other reasons why you don't want to add too much water to the sauce the first time you make it, because you're going to add more water like I just did. Okay, I'm just going to stir this around and incorporate that roux with the sauce so it thickens up a little bit here. As soon as I get this to a simmer, I'm going to go ahead and add the pork. Okay, I think I got that mixed up pretty good. Now, I'm going to add the pork. And again, this is only 2 pounds of pork. It ain't a whole lot. Now I'm just going to stir it up a little bit. Make sure everything's nice and covered. That gets a lid put on it. It gets turned down to simmer. And it cooks for, oh, let's give it another hour or so. I like to check the sauce about every 10-15 minutes or so just to see what it's doing. Especially at the start, because you don't want the bottom to burn on you. And sometimes you might, especially since the heat might be too hot, so you want to watch it. But what we're looking for is looking for the meat to start breaking apart, and it's not quite doing that just yet, but it's only been there for maybe 20 minutes, half hour. But it is hot. We're looking real good. Sticking to the bottom a little bit. Still not breaking up just yet, but we want the meat to break up and we want the meat to start absorbing some of that flavor. So we don't want to be impatient with this. We just want to give it time. You can see they're still in big chunks. See the big chunks? And it is about 10:57 here. And we're going to check and see what we're like. What do you think? Well, the meat is now breaking up. And it's looking real good. So I can turn it back with my spoon and break it up. And see, we still got the white pork meat. Can you see it? So we want to break this up a little bit and let it cook just a while longer in order to let the pork meat get nice and coated with that red sauce. Let's get this puppy open and see what it looks like. Okay, looks like we got it broken up pretty good. Earlier I said I probably had way too much sauce in here. Now it looks like I don't have enough. So we'll just see how it tastes once the meat is done. But you can see the meat is really broken up pretty well. Now all I'm really trying to do is get rid of this, let the pork absorb some of the sauce. Because can you see how it looks? It's looking real shredded, but there's still a lot of white showing. So I want the sauce to be absorbed more by the pork. So we're just going to let it cook for a while longer. We're almost there. I mean, we're not far away from being done with this part of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up a little bit more. It's about 11:15. We're moving on to the next step. The next step is the corn husks. What you have to do is you have to clean them, and you also have to introduce them to water so they get nice and soft. Right now they're awful dry. You hear them crunch? So you just put them in a sink with hot water. How long do they soak? It depends on how hot the water is. It depends on how dry the corn husks are. But what you're also looking for is you're also looking for hair from the corn. These palenque ones are so clean. I mean, there's no corn hair on them at all. So I'm going to let them sit here and soak for about 5 or 10 minutes. They're getting soft right now. And then once they soften up, I'll put them in the drain. Corn husks are nice and soft. They're really pliable. So now I'm just going to shake off the excess water and put them in this drain to drain for a little bit. See? I'd say that's done. Can you see the meat? Yep, I'd say that's done. It's looking real good. I'm unplugging it and I'm going to start letting it cool off. This is the masa I'm going to be using. It's masa that I bought in Indianapolis. You can also get masa in East Chicago. That's probably the best place. This one is a masa con chile, and this is a masa natural. I like to let these things get to room temperature. They spread a little bit easier. And I'm also going to get some of the pork into a bowl. Maybe it'll cool off a little quicker. I don't want to burn my fingers too much here. One thing I should suggest too when you go to buy your masa, be sure that you check it for freshness, because sometimes you'll buy this stuff and it'll be moldy, and if you don't open it up at the store, you won't notice it. So always check your masa before you leave the store. Make sure it's fresh. Okay, this is the next to the last step in the process of making tamales. And the way I've got this set up is I've got 3 sheet trays that I'm going to put corn husks on. I've got a plate that I'm going to use for my ties. I've got my masa set out, and I've got a bowl over here ready for the ones that are already made. So what I do is I just pretty much, I put 4 corn husks on each tray. So I make a dozen at a time. And I just lay them out. I'm going to take a couple different camera angles, so if this camera angle doesn't show up good enough, I'm going to do a different angle here. And I'm also looking for one that's going to make good ties. Why do I use ties? I think years ago when Chris and I first made tamales, we ran into a real problem where they kept falling apart in the pan. And because they kept falling apart, I forgot whose idea it was, but we decided to make ties. Oh, this one looks good. And I just tear these long strips, and you want them a little bit sturdy, because if they're too soft, corn husks, they don't tie very well. To make the tamales, first you take some masa, about yay much. You come up for about a third of the way from the bottom of the tamale on the corn husk, and you just press it out. Now I've seen some people will use spoons and stuff, but hey, that's what fingers are for. And again, I am going to take different camera angles of this, so trust me, I'm spreading it out about that much. See? Up from the bottom, because when you fold it, it's going to fold up. So up from the bottom a little bit and all the way, and I just spread it out to the top. All right, now we put the meat in, and again, I just use my fingers. Ooh, this meat feels nice. And I'm just starting at the bottom and spreading it up. This is about how much meat I'm putting on. I'm putting a lot of meat to them. All right, next step is you roll up. Fold it over so it closes it, and then you fold it up, then you roll it. And I always put a tie on it, so you know that they're Michael's tamales. That's it. Just keep doing this until you're done. Okay, here we go. It's a fold it up, roll it. Now see, that's probably good enough to stick in your pot. But since I never had much luck with it, I always tie them up. There's a fold, flip, roll. Ah. It's a fold, flip up, roll. Okay, right? So you fold it, you flip up on the bottom, and you roll. There it is. Just have to practice at it. Okay, here we go again. Ready? Fold it over, flip it up, fold it together. If you got slow motion video, I guess you could do it that way too, huh? But that's why you don't put it all the way to the end of the bottom, so you're flipping up the bottom to seal it off. And really, see, once it's tied, that's pretty straight. You see how the bottom is? The bottom's down. Take a wad of masa, like that, and just flatten it out. Now, I think when Chris and I first started doing these, we used to use spoons, but I found that it's much easier just picking up a fingerful and spraying it out with my hands. It goes quicker. Well, this chili masa seems to go on a little bit easier than the other stuff did. I don't know if it's because it's a little bit warmer or it spreads out real easy. One of my brothers made the comment that my tamales were small. I'm going, small? I'm spraying them out as far as this corn husk will let me. So I don't know. I'm not really over concerned about how many pork tamales I get, because long as I get 3 dozen to get a batch, I'm happy, and this is my second dozen. So, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get at least 3 dozen. Ready? Flip, fold up, roll. You probably got the hang of it by now, right? You just got to keep doing this until you get all your tamales done. Another tie broke on me. I want you to know this doesn't normally happen. Usually my ties stay tied. Flip, fold, roll. Okay, we've got a time check. It's 12:09. We are ready to put the tamales in the tamale maker pot. Well, it's the same pot we cooked the beef and pork this morning. Okay, first thing that goes in the pot is a boil alert. Now, this is something that Kristen and I found at a shop in Brown County. And it's just a little thing that you put at the bottom of the pan, and it lets you know when the pot is boiling. It's pretty neat. My aunts used to put coins in the bottom of the pot, but I don't. This is the pork water from this morning. So I'm just going to pour that in. This is my strainer. Set this in the pot. I apologize that I don't have a better camera angle for this, but I just I couldn't. I can't figure out a way to do it. This kitchen wasn't made for making videos. The kitchen was made for something else. Okay, out of that 2 pounds of pork meat, I got about 44 tamales. Some of them are with the regular masa, some of them are with the masa with chili. And so I'm just going to stuff them in the pot, and I'm going to stand them straight up, and I'll take a picture of it before I do it. But I just grab them by the handful, 2 handfuls, and set them in the pot. Right? Okay, there are the tamales. They're ready to go in the pot, and here's the pot. You see, I'm kind of just stacking them in there, and you want to leave room in the middle for steam to come up. Okay? Okay, we're checking the time here. It's 12:13. Alright, you can see how I've got the tamales in the pot. Now, there's one more step that needs to happen before I get the tamales going, and that is you need to put a wet towel on top of the tamales. So I just take a clean dish towel, and I ran it through the water, and I wring the water out, and it's just a wet towel that I'm putting over the top of the tamales. Okay. Now, all I gotta do is put the lid on. I've seen some instructions that say cook them for 45 minutes to an hour. I usually cook them for an hour and 10, hour and 15 minutes. I'm gonna shut off for right now. I'll come back once the boil alert's going so you can hear the boil alert rattling around. Yes, the boil alert is rattling away, so we can turn the flame down a little bit here. Oh, I don't know whether I mentioned it. I may not have. When I put the steamer pan in, when I added the water just so it barely came up to the inside bottom of the steamer. You don't want the tamales sitting on a whole lot of moisture or liquid, but you do want enough liquid in there to let the tamales steam for about an hour and 15 minutes. I will check the water in about another 40 minutes or so, but I'm not going to be overly concerned about the water burning off since I'm only making 1 pot. And I think I added enough pork water to last me for this 1 batch. So we're just rattling away, and like I say, it's 12:20, so I'm going to let these cook till at least 1:30, then we'll test them. And we're going to test these pork tamales. You can hear them still rattling away. And we'll just pull one out, any one out. Here we go, we'll try this one. Now, the test of whether the tamales are done is, if it falls off of the corn husk, when you go to test it, it's done. Okay? So we'll just pull back our little And we will, if it falls off, it's done. What do you think? A couple more minutes? Just a little damp there. That'd be because all the meat that's in there. So that's the test. Should I taste it? Nah, I'll throw this one away. Actually, it's pretty good. It's got a real kick to it. Okay, I'm taking the pork ones out of the pot, and I'm just stacking them up. Nobody here to eat them, so they just get stacked up. And yes, they are hot. And yes, this is hot doing this. Ouchie, ouchie, ouchie. Well, actually, these are when these tamales are the best, right when they come out of the pot. Boy, they taste good. Look hot, don't they? We'll bag them up here in a little bit. Yeah, I know. If you want some, there they are. Take some. You can tell I've done this before, huh? Port 81400. There they are, finished.